Welcome to Duck Stash, the University of Oregon show on Dash Sports. I'm Izzy LaRue, and here with me is Michael Strite. Michael, let's get into everything Ducks football. So, Michael, big question now that the schedule finally was released by Larry Scott and the Pac-12. Will the Ducks go undefeated this season?
That's right. We do finally have a schedule. Talked about it last week. We broke news that the schedule is going to be released, the next morning, I think. So we've been sitting on the schedule for a while. It is what I expected, where the North play the North teams, the South play the South, and there is basically you play the five teams that are in your division, and then there's just one crossover to the other division. So leaves us with the question: Oregon, are they going to go undefeated? Now we got to distinguish. I guess undefeated does mean 7-0, so that means that they start 6-0, and then they face the most whoever ends up on top of the South, whoever dominates down there. They face them with a chance to get to 7-0, Pac-12 championship, perfect season. Who knows what else? Probably a Rose Bowl appearance, if however that works out this year. So, Izzy, I'm going to let you take a stance first, but I get the feeling that you believe in this team. You believe in their ability to tear up the Pac-12, and I want to let you lay that argument down before I pick it apart.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So, as you might have guessed by now, Oregon, they're going to go undefeated. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt in my mind that they're going to go undefeated. I'm just looking at the schedule. Stanford, Wazoo, UCLA, Oregon State, Cal, UW. These are all schools that Oregon's going to have no trouble beating. The only school I'm saying right now that we might have some trouble against is Cal because of their quarterback. Now, this guy, he's the real deal. Cal fans loved him last year. I think they lost 4 out of their 5 games was when he was out. And after that, when he came back, they went up scoring 20-plus points per game again. So this guy, he's the real deal. He's going to give our secondary something to deal with. But otherwise than that, this schedule's it's a cakewalk, Michael.
Okay. Izzy, we don't know a lot about how this Ducks team is going to play this season, but from what we do know, do you like this year's team more than last year?
Definitely not. Last year's team had
Exactly.
so much more talent. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, so you do look at that and you're taking a step back. You're maybe not a huge step back. Maybe they retool, regenerate, pull it together. Absolutely, Oregon should be the favorite in all the games they play. And there's going to be a lot of games that Oregon plays this season where it isn't close, and they just sort of run away with a 20-point win over some of these Pac-12 schools. I'm thinking Washington State, possibly Oregon State. Those schools that they're used to beating pretty comfortably. And surprisingly, they didn't exactly do that against either of those teams last year, but that's a different story. The difference is that they didn't go undefeated last year. Yes, it's a shorter schedule, but I think you look at all the, all the potential things that could go wrong in a season, everything that we don't know, all the question marks about this team, and the fact that they do get to the end of the season, and that 7th game of the year is going to be a good one. It's going to be against a ranked team, probably. It's going to be against a USC or a Utah or somebody in the South that is really hot, probably 6-0 or at the very least 5-1 at that point. And look, it's definitely possible that Oregon wins all these games, but I think this schedule screams 6-1 to me. That's where I'm feeling.
Okay, let me ask you a question. You say 6-1, right?
Yes.
Who's that one game to? Tell me.
Last game of the season.
To UW.
No, I mean 7th game of the season after they start
Oh,
6-0.
the Pac-12
But
championship.
also, I didn't love the first 3 games on the schedule. Refresh me, Izzy. What's that first 3 that they play? Because
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
talked
so
about how they're going to slip in that first few games as they're figuring it out.
yeah, so Stanford comes to us, then we go to Pullman, and then UCLA comes back to Austin.
Yeah, now I gotta admit those are some easy games. Out of those 3 games, I I'm concerned for Oregon more so in that early half of the season, but I also can't put my finger on them. I can't predict that they're going to lose any of those games. Stanford, maybe because it's Stanford, maybe it's some Washington State would be a shock. I mean, they're in a down season for sure. UCLA, especially with them coming to Autzen and it being cross country or not cross country, but sort of up the coast like that, doesn't seem very likely. So I guess the Stanford matchup, maybe Stanford is surprisingly good and they sort of bounce back to being a really good team. But I that
Okay,
first three games, I'm thinking
Stan
that's a 3-0. So if I'm losing a game, I'm thinking it's game seven.
Game 7. Okay, let me talk about the Stanford game real quick. So they
Yeah,
lost KJ Costello. Wazoo's head coach Mike Leach took him up, went to Mississippi State, and he smacked the defending Natty champs in Baton Rouge. So that tells you where those two teams are at. And then you're talking about the last game where you think we might lose. So you really think that we're going to lose to USC? Because I don't see any other team winning the South Division. I see USC coming out of it. So you really think we're going to lose that Pac-12 championship game to USC?
I think it's going to be a great game. I'm purely relying on the fact that I just think statistically speaking, it's more likely that they won't go undefeated. It's you got to really be out there and really be
So
stacked
you're a
to
stats guy.
predict. Yes, and that's what I'm following on. And I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say they're not gonna win this game or this game, but over the course of 7 games, it is just really, really hard to go 7-0. And you saw it last year, and obviously there was a lot more games in the season, but you saw that they had that one stumble, and then they almost lost to Washington State. They almost lost to Oregon State at the tail end. They almost lost to Washington. I mean, over the course of the season, they, nearly lost all these games, and they had one game where they completely laid an egg. And now you're taking a team that most likely is a little bit worse and sort of having to figure things out, a little bit more inexperienced. Well, definitely more inexperienced. We know that. And I just think there's going to be something in that schedule where I don't trust them to eke out those close games anymore. There's definitely going to be close games against these bad teams. These Stanfords, these UCLA's, Washington State, you know, they're going to handle their business against most of these teams, but one of these games is just going to turn out really close and it's going to be, all the way on the line in the fourth quarter. I just feel like that you can't avoid that in college football. Pac-12 is chaotic, and I don't have my faith in the experience of this team to pull it out. I mean, I don't know whether it's Butterfield or Tyler Shuck, but you give him the ball and you say, here's the thing, Izzy. Last
Wait,
thing I'm going to say
Michael.
on this before I let you rebut is last year Justin Herbert made game-winning drives. This year, Tyler Shuck and that offense is going to have to make a game-winning drive at some point, if not multiple of them, to go 7-0. And I don't know about that.
Here, before I give you a rebuttal, I want to. Will said, with loss to ASU last year, are we more scared of ASU Utah or USC from the South? Honestly, I'm more scared of an Arizona school. It seems like every year there are kryptonites, so I do not want to face Arizona State in that Pac-12 championship game. I want to see Utah or USC because Utah, we all know what happened last season, and then they lost their quarterback. And USC, honestly, I think that's going to be the matchup that every Pac-12 fan is going to want to see. So I want to see USC or Utah, definitely not ASU. And Matt, to answer your question of who has a better QB versus Oregon and Washington, well, actually, Matt, I think we do know who has a better QB. It's Oregon, just because we have Joe Moorhead, and he's really quarterback focused, and he's going to make sure that whether it's Shuck or Butterfield or a transfer Anthony Brown, whoever that starting quarterback is going to be, they're going to be able to develop and be the star of the offense. So definitely, Matt, Oregon's going to have the better QB come the last game of the regular season.
Those are great questions. I'd say that I really love the thinking about who Oregon could face. the way, in the final game of the year. If it's a Utah or a USC, those are going to be good games. It's going to be a good team, but I'm not exactly afraid of either of those teams. I mean, I respect them, but I'm not afraid of them. The Arizona schools, Oregon fans should rightfully be terrified. The good news is that there is no neutral site for the Pac-12 championship. The higher seed does get to host. Now, I'm not sure how they even decide that if there's two 6-0 teams, but if Oregon gets to host one of the Arizona schools, that's a lot better than traveling to Arizona. You might just have to put your money on the Arizona State. If they got to travel down to Tempe, everything goes out the window.
Yeah. Matt says Dylan Morris or Jacob Sermon might disagree with my assessment. Well, Matt, I guess we'll just see in that UW game at the end of the regular season then if these Washington QBs are really about that. But Michael, yeah, to your point, if Oregon hosts the Pac-12 championship, they're not losing it. And my prediction is going to be right. They're going to go 7-0. They're going to get that fourth spot in the college football playoffs and play whoever the one seed is going to be.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the 6-1 camp. And I think the plainest argument for that is just that I don't think they're as good as last year, but 7-0 is possible. And I think the argument for 7-0 just comes down to you look at their schedule and it feels like everyone they're playing is probably worse rather than better. In the Pac-12, I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen it play out, and we're not going to be able to see the Pac-12 compare themselves to other conferences. But I get the feeling that the entire Pac-12 will continue to just kind of lurch backwards a little bit. You see these Stanfords, these Washingtons, these Washington States, and you're like, are they going to have a good season by their standards? Or are they going to like play above what's expected of them? I don't think so. I mean, maybe Cal, maybe Stanford, maybe Washington, but it's like, the Pac-12 is just not good.
But yeah, that's always been the thing with college football fans is the Pac-12 has been the laughing stock, and rightfully so, because we don't really produce teams that do well in the college football playoffs or even just have multiple teams that are ranked in the top 25.
Yeah, and when I get defensive about the Pac-12, because I do, you know, sometimes get defensive against this sort of Pac-12 is just like a lot of people want to joke about there being, like four power conferences and then the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 is the worst conference, but I think they're like a little bit below the ACC and the Big 12. I don't think it's that big of a gap. I just think they're a little bit beneath those two. And that's just how that shakes out. I don't think they're like by far, just this imposter.
Yeah. And so let's move on to our next topic, Michael. Do you think there's going to be any freshman starters for the Ducks?
Yeah, there's a lot of holes for the Ducks to be filling, and you see a lot of great, amazing freshman recruits. You saw a lot of freshmen, including the notorious five-star Kayvon Thibodeau, get a lot of action. But you also have a lot of these sophomores, these redshirt freshmen, and you see, there's a lot of options for what can fill these holes for Oregon. Izzy, break it down for me. What are these, five stars? We got three of them, and what do they bring to the table that gives them a chance to just be, out there on the field consistently this season?
Yeah, before I break it down, I want to talk to Matt. So, Matt, once again, you're saying that we have 0 national championships. And, Matt, I really appreciate it. This is 2 weeks in a row where you've come in and interacted with us. I know I'm speaking for Michael and myself. We really appreciate you coming in, trying to stifle us with all your questions and trying to get us to slip up. But we won't slip up, Matt. We won't. Just know, Oregon, we're going to get that natty soon. You never know. Even though it's 0 right now, it's coming soon.
Matt, I want to just see you in this chat on the show we do right after Washington, Oregon. That's all I'm saying. Is I better see you in the chat for that show specifically. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, so you're talking about our five-star players that we have this year. So we have Justin Flo, Noah Sewell, and Dante Manning. And honestly, Justin Flo and Noah Sewell, those are two guys I see starting right away. They're both linebackers, and that's a place where we don't really have like strong starters so far with Troy Dye leaving. And these guys, they have the chance to make a huge impact. Because imagine having these two guys lead the defense for 3 years. They're gonna that linebacking core is gonna be so good. Oregon teams are not gonna be afraid to run the ball in Oregon, and with their DBs developing and getting better every year, our defense is gonna look scary. And Dante Manning, he's also a cornerback too. So wait till he develops. It's gonna be scary for us for sure.
Yeah, Dante Manning will probably get put in sort of a Michael Wright situation where he becomes the nickel corner or the dime corner, and he's, not a starter by any means, but will get on the field. You look at Sewell and Flo. I agree with you that they should absolutely get some playing time, that they're going to get out there on the field and they're going to get some of this important sort of experience. And I agree. I think they're going to be out there. We'll see how successful the season ends up for them. The thing with them is, the great example for this in terms of a 5-star is Kayvon Thibodeau. Last year, Kayvon had some moments in the first half of the season, but he didn't exactly shine. It was just more so like, okay, he's out there, he's a useful starter. And then he got that experience and dominated in the back half of the year. I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with and among the best defensive players in the entire Pac 12, regardless of the whole freshman tag. And that is the kind of excitement that Oregon fans will want from these two linebackers. And I think that you're looking at a similar situation is exactly what you would project for them. So I think they'll get their playing time, and it'll be great to see their development this year moving forward. Izzy, my question for you on this is, do you think the bizarre nature of this season, is this going to help sort of a freshman, or is this going to be detrimental? Because what you're looking at is a weird season where a lot of things are up in the air. It's a little bit more difficult to communicate. It's a little bit, just weird. But also, there's been more time. I mean, with a delayed season, we're going to see, it's almost like we're going to see these players in their November form, maybe, than rather their September versions of themselves. They're going to already be a lot more developed than we were expecting.
Yeah. Before I answer, Matt, how is it being a UW fan living in Eugene? Just answer me that question. I really want to know. I find it weird that you're a UW fan living in Eugene. And answer your question, Michael. This is probably the worst time for a freshman to come in and to play for any college football team. Like you see it with Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler. He has not produced at the level that anyone projected him to be at, and it's not his fault at all. It's just there's circumstances that everyone's been having to deal with all these COVID-19 restrictions. You didn't get the summer camp that you wanted, spring ball game. You didn't get the season games. You didn't get the experience needed for a freshman to be able to do good in their first season as a freshman, as a new college player. So I'm worried for these freshmen, Michael. Tell me, are you worried for them too?
That is a great point that we've already seen this play out with other freshmen, and so far there haven't been a lot of great, freshman stars, and there's been a lot of these hyped 5-star recruits that are just kind of out there. And I definitely need to look into it more in terms of where those top recruits were last year and how impressive they've been in the first few games of this year, because they're also not playing non-conference games. I mean, Kayvon got to play a lot. And with these freshmen, when you're playing a team where the game is over at halftime, you get to play them for the whole second half. You get to just roll them out. They get a lot of experience with each other in the flow of a game. They get a lot out of that. And what you're seeing this year is you got to jump right in. And that's another factor, is that if Justin Flo or Noah Sewell isn't quite ready, they're not going to get to play, because they got to be ready to go the defense needs to be all in. And if there's a sophomore or a junior that, maybe we haven't heard their name as much, that just knows the system better, has looked a little bit better in practice, they're not going to have the room to give Justin Flo that in-game experience. They're just going to say, sorry, ride the bench, maybe even take a redshirt year in terms of eligibility, because we know how eligibility is getting different this year as well. So I think they're going to get a lot of playing time. I think they could end up as starters, but you're right on the money when you say that this is just a different year and you can't expect as much from these brand new players.
Well, Matt, sorry it's been brutal for you for these past 17 years being a UW fan in Eugene. I hope you get a little sense of hope watching us talk about Oregon and stuff. Maybe you feel better about UW because we're not UW experts, so we might miss some things, and it might make you feel better about me not knowing who the quarterback's going to be after Jacob Eason's leaving. But make sure to tune in every week. We're always going to be talking about UW just because they're a rival. We're always excited to talk about them because we always beat them, as you know. So just keep coming on, Matt. Really appreciate it. Michael, let's go to our last topic for the day. What does the Amador Linares return mean for the Ducks?
That's right. That was another part of our discussion last week, was the whole opting out and then trying to come back with Javon Holland, with Thomas Graham Jr., with Penei Sewell, with Diamador Lenore, and both Penei Sewell and Javon Holland made sense for them not to come back. They're gone. With these two cornerbacks, Graham and Lenore, there is a genuine reason to come back and put another season of highlights out there, because they're not top 10 draft prospects. I mean, they could raise their value by 1 or 2 rounds by going out there and making big plays this season. So there was a lot of value for these guys to go back and play, because a lot of the reason that they opted out in the first place was just because of the way that the season would clash with all the draft prep, which it isn't doing anymore. So I expected Lenore and Graham to want to come back. My mistake was that they were going to make that decision together. I just kind of assumed that they're two senior cornerbacks that sort of opted out in a similar time frame, that they would both come back strong or make that decision together, and I was wrong there. I mean, obviously they're their own people, they got their own reasons, and Graham, all indications are that he's still out. It's kind of late for him to come back now, and Amador Lenore surprised us and came back, and we'll see him on the field with the Ducks uniform, and I know Mario Cristobal's happy to have him. What it means for the Ducks is that Oregon's defense is even stronger, and Oregon's defense was already very talented, very strong, very experienced. They have a lot going for them, and it just goes to another level when you throw in a piece like this that is going to be a senior that can play cornerback and just knows what he's doing, really.
Yeah, and Matt, talking about Sam Howard again. I don't know if I'm butchering his last name. I educated myself from last week's episode. I now know who he is. That very well might be true. He might be the best Pac-12 QB in the last 10 years, and that's saying a lot with Andrew Luck being one of those QBs. And who knows, even Sam Darnold, maybe if he gets in a better situation. There's been flashes of him doing great. But yeah, I won't say any Sam Howard slander anymore. I know who he is. He's a great kid. Looking forward to seeing him in the Pac-12 soon. And yeah, Michael, yeah, this is huge for our defense, especially in the secondary too, because we were talking about turnovers and our offensive line having start brand new 5 new linemen, and then also having 4 new starting DBs. That's a lot for any team to take. And with having a veteran guy come back and being able to mentor Bridges, James, McKinley, Wright, it's going to be huge for them because they're all still going to get the playing time needed to make plays like they've been doing. But then they're also going to have a veteran guy who's going to be helping them, mentoring them. So when he leaves after this season, next season they're in a better position than they were just having them 4 or 5 just together.
Yeah, so let's look at the best defenses in the Pac-12 last year. Washington was number 3. Oregon came in at number 2. Utah got that number one spot. Now, Utah, as we know, padded their stats with a lot of excellent defensive performances and had those two sort of infamous breakdowns against two of their bigger opponents that they've played this year where they just failed to produce. So there's a strong argument. I mean, I think after what you saw in the Pac 12 championship, you do make the argument that Oregon was the best defense in the conference last year. And one thing that the fact that they gave up 16 and a half points per game actually surprised me a little because what I remember from Oregon's defense was that they had a great knack for big moments, big turnovers, whether it was fourth down stops, whether it was a 3 and out at the end of the game, putting on the clamps, or just those fumbles and interceptions. They were really, really good at those. But outside of those big moments, I think they gave up a lot of yards still. They still struggled with consistency where for entire halves of a game, they didn't look good at all. They would just give up so many yards. I mean, you saw it against Washington State. They got torched for pretty much the whole game. They got torched by Washington for a half. They got beat up by Oregon State pretty good for parts of a game. Utah did solid against them given what their offense is. But I think what pushes this Oregon defense to the next level and makes them right now the best defense in the Pac 12 without another team really being able to stake that claim right now is the return of Lenore, the consistency. If you continue that big play potential and you mix in a little bit more consistency, this is a scary defense and a defense that is going to carry this team. And you're going to see a lot of 17-10 victories or 21-13 victories where the offense just does enough and the defense locks it down.
So, do you see Oregon having a lot of double-digit wins this year, or do you not believe in the offense right now for them to do that this season?
Let's see. We have 7 games, double-digit win, so that's by 10 points.
So, yeah, the only game I'll give you slack for is the Pac-12 championship game. They don't have to. Yeah.
I think 10 points is an easy bar to clear. I think there's going to be a lot of games where after 3 quarters, the opponent that the Ducks are playing is in striking distance, but by the end of the game they win by 10 or 14 or 17 or even 20. I think there's going to be a lot of games where they just sort of continue to grind it out and get those double-digit wins. And I do expect to see 3 or 4, maybe even 5. I think 5 is not crazy to say, double-digit wins this season. But I also think there's going to be those games where the defense is going to have to shoulder so much of a burden that the offense is going to be able to muster between 14 and 21 points in that range, and the defense is going to have to really secure the win by playing excellent defense all 4 quarters. The defense definitely, and this is something we can both agree on, has less margin for error. They cannot have bad halves because that bad half is just, it's the game in a lot of cases.
It kind of sounds like you don't really believe in our offense, Michael, because remember, we still have our running back crew and Verdell, Bibilikio, and Dye, and then we also have our offensive passing threats too. So do you not believe in our offense because of new O-line and new quarterback?
That's exactly it. I don't believe in them. I think they're going to be fine, but I don't think they're going to be that great. I just think this is going to be a year with a lot of struggles and a lot of big moments. There's going to be a lot of great, games and a lot of great moments, but also a lot of really rough patches for the offense. And that's what I'm afraid of is especially in those first 3 games, the offense just looking really sloppy. But I think if you zoom out at the whole Pac-12, they're going to finish 4th, 5th, or 6th in offense in the Pac-12. So that's disappointing, but I don't think they're that bad.
All right. Well, thank you for everyone for tuning in, listening to me and Michael. Thank you for Matt coming again. We do columns now. Check out sportspac12.com where you can find columns from the Dashboard shows. And look out for my columns too. It's every week you're going to have a new Duck column. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to follow us at Dashboards TV on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and check out our website too at dashboards.tv. and make sure to catch our weekly shows Fridays at 5 p.m.